Hi there, I'm Chef Karin, and today I'm going to be making cheddar cheese soufflés. I'm going to need 25 grams of all-purpose flour, 25 grams of butter. I use unsalted for cooking, 250 milliliters of homogenized milk. I've got 100 grams of grated cheddar. I'm going to need 4 eggs. I'm going to use a little bit of extra butter for greasing my ramekins, and I'm going to use some breadcrumbs. So I like to use panko breadcrumbs, and I've toasted them a little bit. I prefer the flavor and the texture when they've been toasted a little bit. I've also got some white pepper, some whole nutmeg here that I'm going to grate into my bechamel, and some salt. A little bit of softened butter. And I'm going to make sure that I get right in there. So depending on what kind of cheese you're using, you could also incorporate some ground nuts into your breadcrumbs. We want to make sure that we have everything ready for the souffle, because once we start to cook, everything goes really quickly. Then I'm going to take my mixing bowl, okay, because we're going to have to mix our egg whites. So I'm going to go ahead and separate my egg. And you want to make sure that the bowl of your mixer where you're going to whip your eggs, as well as your whip, are very clean and also completely dry.
When we're separating the eggs, just making sure that we don't get any little pieces of shell or yolk in.
People can be very nervous about making soufflés, and I just want to say it's actually really easy. So just a few sort of key things that you want to be following. Again, making sure that bowl is nice and clean, making sure all your mise en place, your prep work is ready before you start. Then I'm going to start to make my bechamel. I'm going to add in my butter, and I'm going to melt that down. Then I'm going to add in my flour. And we just want to cook it for about a minute or so, just to get some of that rawness out of the flour. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add some of our milk here. So we add a little bit at first, and we're going to whisk to incorporate. Okay. And we want to make sure that we don't add too much liquid at this point, just to avoid lumps. Smooth and homogeneous. Okay. We can add in the rest of the milk. A little bit of salt. So I've got about half a teaspoon of salt here. White pepper that's going to go in. And keep whisking. I'm going to take some whole nutmeg and just grate some of that in there. So once that bechamel is nice and thick, I'm going to go ahead and start to whip my egg whites. A little pinch of salt in there. Okay. We're going to take that bechamel, going to whisk in those egg yolks nice and quickly. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and add in my grated cheddar cheese. When your egg whites start to look like little fluffy clouds, chances are they are ready to go. So here's what I'm talking about. There's those beautiful soft peaks, holding its shape but not too strongly. So I'm going to take about half of those egg whites, and I'm going to use my whisk to just fold them into my bechamel. I'm going to take the rest of them. You can either do it in half or thirds. I'm going to fill the ramekins up to the little line that's just beneath the top. Add it in. I've got my soufflés in their dishes. I could put these into a water bath, or I could just slide them in like this. I'm just going to do that. Close the oven door, and I'm going to just leave them in there without opening the oven. I've turned the light on. Because they're individuals, they're going to take approximately 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm going to be watching close. So we're about at the 10-minute mark, and we see them starting to rise. So what I'm waiting for here is for them to rise and to be nice and golden brown. So they're already, well above the top of the ramekins. My soufflés are almost done, and I want to make sure that I'm ready to serve and ready to receive them, because once they come out of the oven, they literally should hit the plate and then be served to our guests. All right, so it's been about 15 minutes. Take my soufflés out. Ooh. We get to them to the table as soon as possible. Et voila. So light, so fluffy. Would go great with a glass of rosé.